This is Jack Levine, an American painter. He is beginning work on a large canvas, 7 feet across and 8 feet high. This coat of buff is the underpainting, an example of the traditional approach to craft that has always characterized Levine's work. He was an impressive draftsman even at the age of 12. String Quartet, his first major oil painting, was begun in 1935, when Levine was only 20 years old. Succeeding paintings show even more clearly Levine's continuing interest in the real world around him. Over the years, he has become known as a painter of political protest and social comment, an identification that tends to obscure the great variety in his work, not only in style and technique, but also in content and mood. Since the end of World War II, Levine has lived and worked in New York City. It is here on Bleecker Street in Greenwich Village, in his second-floor studio, that he applied the buff underpainting to the 7-by-8-foot canvas.
Well, I have this large canvas, and I have just a vague sense of what I'm going to do. I do want to paint a sort of a board meeting of, let's say, like a congressional committee. using chalk, which can be easily removed, leaves no residue. Chalk is simply a filler without any pigment to it. It has a little body, but no coloration, actually. When it's wet down, there's no coloration. This is not an enlargement of some smaller version. I work full scale directly on the canvas. This is really an improvisation in scale. My idea is to paint a big painting as though it were a small one. Now here I'm doing a drawing very boldly with burnt umber, which is a dark brown. The idea being to use it as heavily, as crudely as possible, because it will give me the strongest breakaway from the flat tone that I had, and perhaps be a lead into heavy shadows. Now I'm using a white with a slight tinge of yellow in it. There's a little earth yellow in it, so it won't be too cold in tint. The problem is, as far as I'm concerned, there are no models. There almost never are. I almost never use models at all. And all I can do while I'm thinking of a number of other things is to have so-and-so in mind and simply make him show up, in a sense, to invoke the devil. As far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is a painting performance. My intent in this painting is to do several portraits of well-known people. That's my first effort at a goat. It might help establish a fine barnyard flavor. I'm trying to work up a situation which is conspiratorial in character, everybody whispering, leering. I had thought of it as an investigation, and I had a witness in the foreground to testify, and I discarded the idea. Decided that the spectator would be the witness. At this point, some of the leading characters are already quite clearly roughed in. But I'm still very tentative about what's on the table. But you see, I used this green transparency to reduce the brightness of the underlying monochrome, and to give myself a cool base on which to use these pinks. This is a very traditional way of working, even if the painting is not very traditional in appearance. The craft involved is, I think, completely traditional. Now I've used this amber transparency. I want to get the tonality of a wooden table surface. As you see, I broke in some sudden color touches, Prussian blue and white, and I'm trying to get the same iridescence on his necktie as on the pigeons. You see, that's passage. An iridescent pigeon and an iridescent necktie. I'm way past the initial drawing I did. Some of those dark lines are now incorporated as shadows. The lights are heavily built up. It's taken on a solid relief character. At this stage, it's high-pitched and pale and deficient in color. The chairman of the investigating committee and his attorney. A haunted, clever, sly face. A Southern congressman. It's an uneven development, and I don't yet know how I'm going to work out the lower half of the painting. And then it occurred to me that a pumpkin would be a very good idea in the foreground because it could suggest Halloween, Witch's Sabbath, Walpurgisnacht, and a few other things. I suppose ideally, you should always work as though you're just beginning and be ready to get rid of anything for the sake of just continuing. But that's easier said than done. You're just as apt to be stopped by successful passages which you can't touch. So you committed here, you committed there, and you have to bridge in between. Well, I thought it had a core to it. I felt that symbolically you're sort of building up, iconographically. Stewart pigeons, American legionnaires, the little black address book, the good book. Well, my goat's coming along now. A Judas goat. I didn't have a model for the goat. I think that, I don't know, maybe more like a horse in some ways. I guess I'm more familiar with horses than goats, but I have a white goat next to a man in a white suit. I decided here that I had to have a continuous white passage going from the white suit of the Southern congressman through the goat and down. Well, this is a transparency I'm putting down, and the rag takes off the excess. It is a film, actually. The idea is that you remove the excess and you can see through it. I had been working on this painting for many weeks before it occurred to me that I needed 3 Klansmen. Oil painting, I think ideally, is a play between light and dark, warm and cool, and opaque and transparent. Now I have a million things going, you see, but there was the problem somehow of still of phrasing it so that the effect wouldn't be one of a terrible confusion. I did rent an old typewriter. There I found I needed a model, finally. You see the bell? It's supposed to be a Judas goat. It brings the innocent lambs to the slaughter. Documents. Plot thickens. Investigators. I sort of trusted the men and the animals together. And when I swung off into this pageantry, you know, the Shriners, the Legionnaires, the Klansmen, I thought that, you know, this thing has got more layers than an onion. At one time, I felt that this painting was altogether too bright and gay, considering the type of statement I was making. And I succeeded, I think, after considerable effort, in introducing a kind of a gloomy, grave sort of quality. Some I got by deepening the shadows. I think I got a sort of a sense of a threatening feeling. However, the whole business of freshness, if the thing begins to look stale, well, then you just have to liven it up. Obviously, you can't get these shots of light unless you've built up your darks, unless you've built up your deep transparency so that you have a reflex. Obviously, on a white canvas, you can't do it. It takes a lot of work until a painting finally gets to this stage. I do skip around, and I should. Actually, my besetting sin, I think, is the way I have of fixating on the local area. Well, you never finished with anything, apparently. I always felt, I felt I reached a point where I could still improve it, but on the other hand, I could make it worse. There are certain things that are best done if you let them alone.
What are you going to do? Are you trying to tell him something?
I remember the opening of the exhibition. When it was put up in the gallery, it took a whole wall, and it was lit up pretty well. I didn't stand there and examine it. I went to the bar and I had a drink. I mean, you know, enough is enough.